thinking it'd be cool to talk about, like, you started out flipping homes, and then now you're kind of shifting focus because of, like, you wanted to be more prominent dad.
Right. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, because I mean, everybody thinks they want to have all this active operation stuff. You know what I mean? So, and you realize, no, what are the most important things in life? So, but
Well,
yeah,
tell me about it. Like, what before you were flipping homes, what were you doing?
So just to give you a little background, I was working at a CPA firm. I went to UC Santa Barbara, got a degree in economics with an emphasis in accounting, and in my mind, I literally became a CPA because they didn't have architecture school at UC Santa Barbara, and there was too many girls there. That was the mindset that I had when I was like 18, 19 years old, going, I'm not leaving this school. There's squirt gun fights with girls in bikinis everywhere. Like, I'm going to pick my career based off of that, and you're going, idiot, And so, and my dad was a CPA, so I kind of had a taste for what that looked like, to a degree. He would make me do accounting questions during the summer break from college and stuff like that, as well. And so I thought in my head, okay, cool, like that's a good profession to go into, and I was good at math and everything, and really didn't understand true accounting until I started working at a CPA firm. And then I realized I was just bored out of my mind. It wasn't my personality to go do that, and I felt like honestly crying multiple times on the way to work, going, it's so monotonous doing the same, audits and tax every year, and just it was yeah, I got to see the inner workings of different real estate companies. That part was cool, and some of the people I worked with was cool, but at the end of the day, there was no real like reward out of this, right? They're like, oh, next year you get a 3% raise. You're like, what? What is this? And I think I started out like $33,000 a year and got my $36,000 a year salary after year one or something. It was just, but I was getting my CPA hours. I had taken the test already and needed the hours of 2 years before I could actually become a CPA. And so I was doing that at the same time, and then I was just looking for something else, going, this is not fulfilling to me. What do I do? Do I open a bar? What do I know how to make money, right? Like, I don't know
every
anything
dad
about.
and man looks at bars at some point in their
Yeah,
life.
you're like, that seems easy, but it's probably not. But at the end of the day, like, you go through and you try to think of what ways should I find a way of making money and doing something different. And if you're not exposed to it early as an entrepreneur or something, maybe it's in the family as an entrepreneur, then you just don't know. I was always grown up, get a job, or go get a college, get a job, work your way up the ladder. There was no entrepreneur mindset. And my dad had a side CPA practice, so that was kind of cool. We got to go to extra meals sometimes from that, every once in a while. But at the end of the day, you realize, hey, nobody taught you or teaches you how to make money and how to find ways of making money. And then I had my stepbrother came to me because he was an engineer and equally bored out of his mind, and my other stepbrother was a computer programmer and equally bored out of his mind. And they came to me and said, hey, we got this real estate course. It's only like 16 grand to go to. Come check it out. And I was like, oh, you got jacked, immediately in my head, right? Like, you don't pay for classes.
It's half your income.
Right. I'm like, yeah, exactly. I think I was making like 100 at that time because I got raises and then went through and jumped ship to a new firm and jumped my salary up, of course. But at the end of the day, so I jumped up pretty quickly. But at the end of the day, like, it was just being bored out of my mind, but going, okay, I'm not going to go to this. This sounds like a scam. Like, you just paid a bunch of money for this. That's crazy. And I was going to totally flake on him. And then he finally calls me like the day of the event. He's like, you got to go. Come check it out. Please, you have to come. So I went, and immediately my mindset was like, oh my God, here's a new way of making money. Like, this is it right here. And ever since then, my learning curve was like this. I got my first deal under contract that I was going to flip a house, and I quit my CPA firm job. And, that was 2006. So I was a genius for about a year and a half before I got my ass handed to me by the market crash and realized I was not a genius at all. So
you say you're good at math, but like, I consider me to be good at math. And when you start going into numbers, I have to give you 100% of my concentration. Like, I'm giving you all of my focus to make sure that I follow your numbers. because you're good at math on a different level than most people. Like, you just very brush that off. I give you 100% of my focus when you open up a spreadsheet, because that's what it takes for me to follow what you're doing.
Yeah, I think my superpower is financial modeling. This is why I have two 47-inch wide monitors behind me so that I can have Excel open on this giant screen. And really, it's just, how does this work? How do we cover costs here? How do we make sure that, investors are protected, and you go through and do a preferred return for incentive for performance, and all of those different aspects that go into a good deal. How do you model it so it's perfect for investors? It's perfect for the operators to make a lot of money, but based off of the incentive there, so that they had to perform for the investors first. And how do I structure this to mitigate risk in every possible way? And I really love doing that, especially when it's for other people where I don't have a lot of risk involved or anything like that myself. So.
So you spent 15 years pretty much becoming the expert in flipping houses. I was talking to a dude yesterday, Tom, and he referred to you as the GOAT when it came to real estate investments. But that's not what you're doing right now. Like, you've kind of stepped away from flipping houses. Why?
Yeah, so, I first started out with the mindset going, I have to flip houses because I have to replace my salary and make money in order to survive, right? But that's probably one of the hardest ways to invest, because all the deal flow is on you. You got to market to find deals. You got to manage construction. You got to manage massive teams. And if you're going to make good money out of it to cover your overhead, your team involved, and your own salary, you got to be doing multiple of these on a monthly basis, right? So that is a bigger marketing system and a bigger animal to overcome. And also, the property management, the sales of these assets. There's a lot that goes into that workload. And at first I'm like, I have to do this because this is how you become a flipper. Like, I'm going to be the dopest dude in the room because I'm going to flip a bunch of houses. And you're like, no, that just wasted a bunch of time and cost me probably $50 million if you do the math. I flipped over 1,000 houses, and when you actually do the math on that, every single one of them has appreciated at least over $50,000. And if I would have held those, I'd have $50 million right now of equity in these assets, right? And you're just like, oh, but then you become a specialist at it, which is great. And I really switched my strategies and went into lending, and now even more passive lending, as well as syndications and investments, where I can be a step away from the property and have a team that's helping with the management and the asset management, and I can oversee and add value from another level, really, so I could spend more time with my kids. Because being an active operator, especially when you jump ship into a new deal, you're like, I better focus, and I better make my money, and I better grind at all times. I thought, hey, I'm going to have extra time to go to the gym, and then you realize, no, I'm working 14-hour days. This is not gym time, And at the end of the day, it came down to realizing what's important in life. And your kids are the most important thing. And my son just turned 9. My daughter just is about to turn 6. And it's pretty awesome. We bought my son a Gatling gun, Nerf gun for Christmas, so it was pretty awesome. Or for his birthday, not Christmas, for his birthday that just passed. And he was stoked shooting my brother-in-law with it, of course. And you realize, hey, this time is short. You got to spend the time now. Forget everything else. Money doesn't matter at the end of the day comparatively. And don't get me wrong, there's now, because I've built so much of experience level doing this, I'm able to do this much more passively and be able to utilize my resources from the capital side, from my operations experience, my financial modeling experience, and my asset management experience to be able to take that step back and put the right people in place to be able to do these things for me and not have to spend that time. So my entire strategy has been flipped on its head, where I want nothing to do with being an active full-time flipper and operator in that space. It's a lot of work, but it's great to build experience, build your grit, because you take a lot of punches as you go through flipping houses, and the grit is one of the biggest things, I think, for success. That's one of the most important aspects, just grinding through. And next problem, solve it. Next problem, solve it. Don't have an emotional reaction. Just keep focusing on the solution. And that is what I attribute to a lot of my success, because I took that massive hit earlier and realized my ego was destroyed, and thinking I was dope to realizing I didn't know crap, So, but yeah, so that's kind of the story, right? So that I go through.
did you get anyone else a Nerf gun or just your son? Like, or did you at least arm your daughter with a Nerf gun too?
I tried to give my brother-in-law the worst Nerf gun possible, so that way, when my son is shooting him with the Gatling gun, he has no real defense. So that was the whole point of this whole thing: is shoot the brother-in-law as much as I can, you know. So, but yeah, we do
you gotta
Nerf
arm the
wars
rest of the
sometimes.
house now. Okay, good. Good.
Yeah.
My dad hit me up the other day and he said, "Hey, I'm thinking about flipping a house." Like, and we live in Southern California, and he's never flipped a house before, but he wanted to make some cash. And I was like, "Pop, like there are a lot better and less riskier ways for you to go into this because, like you were saying, it takes so much work to really flip a house, to do that passively." I was like, I've even stayed away from doing that personally, especially here in California. And you don't even lend on flips in California, right?
No, not at all. And it's because of the lending laws here in California are absolutely horrendous. And so I don't like to do a lot of business in California. It's a communist state. So I try to, even though I live here, I try to invest where the tenant landlord laws and the laws are in favor of investors, you know? So that's all. It really just comes to that aspect. And then also I like to have properties that cash flow as a backup plan. If I'm going to go flip houses, California is not a market that's going to cash flow. If everything gets stuck and I can't sell that thing, I might be making a 3% cash on cash return versus out of state, I might be at 6 or 7 or 9% cash on cash on those types of deals if I can't sell it. So it's a backup risk mitigation by investing in different markets as well.
So tell me about the two things you're working on now, because you have two ones I thought were pretty cool, and obviously people know I'm involved in these as well. So disclaimer, like Matt and I help raise money for these together. You're helping people get affordable housing with mobile housing, and then helping people get out of debt.
Yeah, so that's what's super cool about this is you can structure your deals to where you're solving a problem for society as a whole at the same time as you being able to actually make money on the deals. And so one of the things we do is we try to provide affordable housing to homeowners where, you're looking at, mid-grade properties in the Midwest. We do seller financing to homeowners on a lot of these strategies. We'll even help other investors to create their own cash flow streams through these different assets and properties that we provide. On the other side of things, we also have debt structures that we invest in because, real estate structures are great for adding value to properties and building in your equity, for being able to build up an inflation hedge for holding long-term, tax benefits, and some cash flow. But there's some volatility to some of that, right? A tenant moves out, you have a repair here and there, but the long term is what you're looking at on those deals, that wealth building effect of owning assets. On the debt side of things, you're looking at how do I cover my expenses with monthly cash flow right now? How do I focus on the cash flow piece and not necessarily the equity build piece, because then you can be truly financially free based off that cash flow aspect of things. And so we focus on invalidating consumer credit card debt and accounts receivable financing type strategies, lending to construction lenders or construction flippers in different markets around the country and investors in different markets to be able to help them rehab these workforce housings and provide more housing to the community as well. I usually don't do these higher end stuff. I stick with the workforce type housing that has price points anywhere between, I'll say, under $500,000 across the U.S., which is usually more. You can't construct it for how much you can buy it for, right?
Yeah.
And so we try to stick with that niche as well as the lending side and offer these two things for investors for the two different benefits that come out of those different strategies. So, and I love the tax benefit side on the properties because I hate paying the government money on taxes. So,
That's really the biggest benefit of investing in real estate. All of the headaches and stuff like you brought up is valid, but understanding the tax benefits, especially as a CPA, is going to be a huge win. If you're a dad right now and you're trying to create passive income and look to invest, how would you do it, now with all the knowledge you have?
Well, first, I wasn't a dad when I quit my CPA
no,
firm.
you're not.
In real estate at the time. I didn't have the obligations that I do now, where I probably would continue to work, and continue to try to grow my portfolio slowly over a period of time if I had kids, at that time. Being a dad, I think you have to be very much more strategic. You have to go through and make sure you have 12 to 24 months of expenses set aside at all times before you even start to think about investing in real estate and growing your worth right there on those things, because you got to have that rainy day fund. You can't be ending up struggling, right? If you lose your job for your current income stream or something like that happens, or the economy tanks, make sure you're good for a couple of years, right? 12 months to 24 months of expenses I highly recommend before investing, especially with these obligations as a parent, right? You got to take care of the kids, make sure they can eat, right? So you can't take the same level of risks as a single person that's just going to jump ship and go crazy, right? I knew that I threw myself to the wolves, that I'll either sink or swim, one of the two. I don't know. We'll figure it out, right? Now I'd be much more reluctant to do that. At the same time, there's strategic ways to do this, right? I would personally allocate all of your entire budget, outline your budget of what your monthly expenses are so you know where your target is, and then focus on the cash flow streams that are going to get there. And every single time you have a new investment that creates cash flow, allocate it to one of your expenses so that you have these minimal wins. If it's $250 a month, great. Your cell phone bill is paid for the rest of your life. Awesome. Go to the next expense and the next expense. Maybe do the mortgage last or something like that. Or start out chipping away at the mortgage first. And it's just a mental thing that keeps you focused on those areas. And I would say one of the biggest tax saving things you can do, especially with being a dad, is reining in and realizing what your true expenses are. How much is your wife spending at Amazon every single week, and how many boxes are coming in the door, right? So
the better way to phrase that is, how much stuff are you buying to keep your wife and kids happy? That's really
right. Is it $1,000 a month that you could live with, or is it $5? What is it, right? And realize that that's just chipping away at what your true cash flow is, and realizing what's important. It's harder to get your wife to realize those things than you do necessarily, or at least for the majority of the guys that we're probably talking to. So.
Well, I had to own that myself, because I did exactly what you said not to do right there. Was I landed this giant wholesale deal, and I was like, yep, I can do this. We're going to quit the job. And so we did. Made that decision as a family, but I wanted to jump in and sink or swim and kind of see what was there. But when I went through our expenses, I was like, man, I'm buying a lot of stuff specifically to make my wife or kids happy, and there's nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with that at all. But understanding, like you said, where those numbers are, and being able to own that and kind of reel that in, or own that, because the spreadsheet that well.
And I think it's hard sometimes, because if you're out there and you have family expenses, but then you have business expenses too, sometimes it's easy to commingle those and realize, wow, I need a budget for business. I need to be able to have this money set aside for business consistently, so that that's separated from, that's income producing expenses versus family expenses that you have to have no matter what. And you start to dial those things in, and it's no fun to reduce your expenses on the family side. Yes, if you're paying attention to it, you can dial it in. If you're looking at it every single week, guaranteed you're going to spend a lot less. I think I remember one time I had my wife on a cookie jar system for a month in cash, where she couldn't use a credit card, and I swear we dropped our expenses by 60%. It was insane. So, but at the end of, that's not fun either, because your wife was going to kill you over a period of time. But I've made it do it just a point to say, look, this is how much we really could get away with spending or not spending every month if we had a better focus on that system. But really, it's more fun to learn how to make more money, right? But it depends on how much active time you have, and active and actual income you're bringing in, and savings you have to invest in stuff. Because if you don't have the cash to go invest to create that cash flow, then you got to do something active to be able to do that, whether that's finding deals, selling deals, raising capital for deals, and doing active operations, or asset management, or property management. There's a million ways of making money if you don't have the cash for yourself, but you got to be able to dial that in and say, okay, I'm going to allocate this much a week only because the family life is number one, and realize that's number one always.
Do you incorporate this or kind of teach this to your kids at their age now?
I was super proud that my son on the way to the Laker game the other day was like, Dad, we're learning how to run a business at school right now. Can we talk about running a business? And I was like, oh, my heart is just like, thank you, right? And then I got to have a detailed, deep dive conversation with them where he's like, oh, let's start by opening up a juice stand. I'm like, okay, simple enough, lemonade stand type mentality. First thing he thinks of, right? It's probably what they talked about at school. He goes to a private school. He doesn't go to public school in California.
I was
I'm not
wondering where
crazy.
you would get that
So
that kind
yeah,
of schooling.
it's it's definitely private. So, and and so I had a deep dive conversation with him about, hey, this is the structure of a business, and what do you plan on doing? How much do you think you'll sell it for? Oh, well, what do you think it's going to cost to do that? And where are you going to get the money to buy those things? And he's like, oh, I'll just ask my friends for it. I'm like, well, your friends, that's a good idea, but they're going to want something in return. Are you going to pay them, some of the profits on the deal or on your sales to make that happen? And he's like, no, they'll just give it to me. And I'm like, no, they won't just give it to you, buddy. I said, that's socialism. We don't go there, So and really, he just started seeing these angles going, okay, well, I could pay him 20% of the profits or something like that. I was like, okay, well, see how much your profits are, do the math. If you had this many sales and it costs you this much money, how much is left over that you could pay them for helping with the money, and how are you going to pay them back? And it's just little things like that. It was the most exciting time in my life, I think, in the last 10 years, just explaining to my son how to run a business. But
On the way to the
cool
Laker
to
game.
see that and see his personality, and he knows that I'm talking to investors. He's always around me when I'm talking to investors a lot. I can't wait to take him to networking events just so he can be a fly on the wall and listen to what everybody else has to say, because they learn so much just soaking it in, and we don't even realize it. And I realized it when my daughter cursed and said, "What the F?" And I was like, "Oh," my wife just looked at me like, "You're dead right now," So
They're soaking in everything.
everything, yeah.
They're soaking in the good and the bad. Hey, if somebody
Right.
wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way to do it?
They can go to MathewOwens.com with one T in Matthew, so MathewOwens.com. We got free tools and quick analysis sheet and due diligence checklist and all kinds of stuff people can have for free on our site. So
And if you're interested, like I said, Matt and I do a lot of investments together. So if you do have any interest in kind of learning about them, you can also just scan the QR code at the end of this and we'll shoot you an email. Brother, thanks for coming on. I super appreciate you.
do you want to learn how to create financial freedom in your life through real estate and take your investing business to the next level? If so, you can follow us in one of the following ways. First, you can take one of our free webinars on how to analyze property, how to raise capital for real estate, and how to market and find deals. Three of the key pillars to becoming a successful real estate investor. Number two, you can join us on our mailing list where you'll get tips and tricks on real estate investing directly to your inbox. And number three, you can take our 6-month real estate course that teaches you every aspect of real estate investing you can think of, and more importantly, create financial freedom in your life through real estate investing strategies that I teach. If you want a master's in real estate in 6 months, this course is for you. We're going to go over how to raise money, promissory notes, syndications, fixing and flipping, buy and hold investing, tax and legal structures, self-directed retirement accounts, financial education, how to run a business, how to market and find your deals, and most importantly, how to create that financial freedom in your life so that you can stop trading your time for money and create passive real estate cash flow that you can live off of. If you're interested, go ahead and click on one of the links below, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the other side.